Marvel Rivals, a team-based PvP game similar to Overwatch, is a video game that had and is still having an immense rise to fame. The roster of characters in the game includes dozens of Marvel heroes and villains, from most famous heroes like the Avengers to more unknown characters. We decided to make a simple guide for using some of the characters in the game, specifically the duelist characters. Black Widow. Black Widow is a sniper, but not a very strong one. She has a sniper rifle that should probably deal more damage, since it doesn't even kill on a headshot, and has some other abilities that don't really do much. She isn't nearly as much of a pain to deal with as our other sniper, who we will cover later due to her low damage. You can try to play her, but she's overall pretty weak and probably the worst character in the game. Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl's main attacks do pretty good against your opponents. Her abilities are alright, giving her some good mobility and the ability to briefly stun your opponents, but the fact that you can use your third ability to recharge the first two makes them even better. Her ult is next to useless though, as it fires out a stampede of squirrels that usually don't hit anything due to their random movement. Overall, a pretty average but somewhat fun character. Star-Lord. Star-Lord isn't super powerful and usually is an annoyance to play against due to his fast weapons and ult. His main attack is pretty good due to its speed, and his other abilities give him some nice mobility and AoE damage. His ult allows him to fly, lock onto enemies, and shoot rapidly at them, shredding most enemies instantly. He's a good place to start when you first pick up the game. Storm. Storm's kit mostly focuses on buffing teammates and herself for better attacks, which might be annoying for some. Her main attack doesn't deal too much damage, but is fired at a very fast speed. Her ult is another really good damaging ult, where she becomes a tornado that deals massive damage to all enemies nearby as you control it around the map. She's another average character that might be a good place to start off when playing the game. Namor. Namor's main attack is a decent thrown spear, and his abilities allow him to get off some extra damage with his squids and protect himself with his orb. His squids don't deal much damage, but are still pretty effective since people forget to kill them. His ult is a large area of damage that stuns all enemies for a moment, which is always useful to the team. Overall, he's pretty good for most situations. Iron Man. Iron Man is a pretty fun character to play, but a very annoying character to fight against. His kit is focused on projectile attacks from afar with his repulsors, rockets, and unibeam. The damage output on his repulsors is rather low, so he often ends up finishing off characters with them, but his unibeam does much higher damage, although it is a low-range attack. His mobility is pretty good, and he's hard to hit due to his flight. For his ult, he shoots out a giant instant-kill projectile that can wipe an entire team. He's a good character to play, but annoying to play against. Wolverine. Wolverine plays the role of Tank Shredder. He does high damage, but can be taken down easily when he isn't jumping around. He has good mobility with his jumps and dashes, and his ult is good at grouping up enemies. When teaming up with Hulk, he can take down aerial characters like Iron Man and Storm. As mentioned before, the best way to use him is to go after the tanks, since they have high health and less damage. He's a decent character when used properly. Magic. Magic has a heavy-hitting AoE attacks, and projectiles that are good at picking off people one by one. Her attacks give her extra health, meaning she can hold her own against multiple enemies for a while as well. Her ult makes her attacks even more heavy-hitting, but slow. She's a good character for holding a crowded point, and a character that can recover from a lot of damage easily. Overall, a fun character to play. Punisher. Punisher's a heavy weapon-focused character that has both a high fire rate gun and a shotgun, which he can switch between. He also can deploy a turret, which he can fire from at a high fire rate. This turret deals high damage, but leaves the Punisher vulnerable since he can't move while firing it. For his ult, he pulls out two massive Gatling guns and a missile launcher, which shreds through enemies and even has enough DPS to overpower Luna Snow's ult. He's a well-balanced, damage-focused character that's good at dealing damage from a distance. Scarlet Witch. Wanda's main attack locks onto the nearest enemy and deals damage over time while you hold the attack button, making her very annoying to deal with. She can fire Chaos Blasts that deal damage, and an orb that stuns enemies briefly while they are in it. She also has an ability that allows her to turn invisible and fly away, which is useful for escaping a losing battle or sneaking up on a team to ult. For her ult, she starts flying and charging it up, being exposed while doing this. After a few seconds of charging, she unleashes a giant Chaos Blast in a large area around her, killing all enemies within it instantly. Overall, a pretty good mobile character that is good at getting behind enemy lines to kill all of the healers. Moon Knight. Moon Knight's main gimmick is his Onks, which you can throw down behind your enemies. When you hit your Onks with your main attack, it bounces off the Onk toward the enemy, shredding them. People tend to notice and destroy these Onks quickly though. He has good mobility with his grappling hook and gliding, and is often found on top of buildings, shooting down at enemies. For his ult, he spawns a portal that rains down damaging moon hands, which he can summon from a long distance away. Overall, a pretty flexible character. Winter Soldier.
Armed and dangerous! Again! 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 Again!
Bucky is probably the most balanced character on the Duelist roster. His main attack is a gun with 3 shots that reloads quickly. He has a hook that can pull enemies in, a dash that pushes enemies up and away, and a projectile that does decent damage. These 3 can be used right after each other for a good combo. For his ult, he flies into the air and slams down on enemies, lowering their max health with the red bar. If enemies with this red bar are killed by Bucky before the bar disappears, he gets his ult again. This can be used to team wipe too. He's pretty fun and well-balanced character to play. Black Panther. Black Panther can throw spears at enemies to mark them, which makes it so that your dash ability refreshes when hitting the marked enemy. These dashes are your main source of damage, with one refreshing when you hit marked enemies and one applying the marked enemies. His ult is basically a giant panther that places markers on everyone it hits so that you can get refreshes on your dashes. Large combos of dashes is the way to go with Black Panther. He's a pretty good character if you manage to get these big combos. Iron Fist. Iron Fist is a close and personal character that is particularly good at getting past the front line of teams and targeting healers in the back. He can parry projectiles and self-heal and can lock onto enemies very quickly, even quickly enough to hit an Iron Man flying away. Basically, he can fly with Kung Fu. His ult gives his punches even more range and damage. Overall, a good character for destroying enemy backlines, but very annoying to play against. Psylocke. Psylocke can turn invisible and appear behind enemies, making her pretty good at breaking through front lines. Her main source of damage is through shurikens that she can shoot and call back to cause damage twice. She also has a dash that deals damage and stacks twice. Her ult is one of the better ultimates in the game. She moves quickly towards all enemies in a nearby area and one by one deals a massive amount of damage to them, usually killing them. She's a good character to play and well balanced. Spider-Man. Spider-Man has a very big learning curve. He has webs that he can shoot out to mark enemies, which causes one of his abilities to change functionality when used on the marked enemies. He also has a spider punch that launches all enemies hit by it into the air. His main focus, of course, is his mobility with his web slingers. You can fire them off really quickly and get to places faster than anyone else. For his ult, he fires off a bunch of webs all around him, dealing loads of damage and usually killing everyone caught in it. Overall, a very technical character, but very high potential if played right. Hela. Hela's main attack is a quick blade that can hit from a very long distance away. For her abilities, she can shoot a few daggers that stick to the ground or any enemies they hit for a few seconds before exploding. She can also throw an orb that deals damage and pulls enemies towards it. For her ult, she flies into the sky and can shoot high damage skulls at enemies, dealing AoE damage when they are hit to the ground. She also gains a lot of bonus health when ulting, making her very hard to kill. Whenever Hela kills someone, it spawns a magical crow that explodes after a few seconds, dealing damage to nearby enemies. She's a very good character for dealing damage from a distance. Hawkeye. Hawkeye is the superior of the two snipers by far. His main weapon is his bow, which can only fire one shot at a time in its main mode. However, that singular shot can one-shot an enemy from across the map with a headshot. In the bow's alternate mode, he shoots out 3 explosive arrows. However, this isn't nearly as effective as the main mode. He has a hypersonic arrow that knocks enemies down, and a slash for dealing with enemies up close. He can also double jump. For his ult, he makes it so afterimages of enemies appear behind them, which he can shoot at to damage the enemies. His arrows also charge to full charge instantly during his ult. He's probably the best character in the game, as long as you can aim decently well.